This week, if the last few people you recruited just really felt like a letdown, keep listening because this week is going to change your game when it comes to recruitment. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancott, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. Claire, do you love doing this podcast?
I actually do. We love it so much we do it on a weekend, don't we? We only ever do this on a Sunday now, unless something else is, we're going on holiday or something.
Because we haven't got time in our normal day jobs running the companies to be able to actually sit and have a chitty chat for a bit.
A chitty chat.
Chitty chat. The reason I ask if you love doing this podcast is because you don't have to do it, do you? You choose to do it.
It's
like freelance work, isn't it? A bit like freelance work.
I feel like this is a trip.
It's not. You're not part of a big organisation that you don't have a job, do you? You have a choice.
What are you on about?
Well, we'll find out because it's linked to this week's news story. But anyway, before we move on to this week's news story, you want to talk about, what do you want to talk about? We're talking about recruitment today, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
And we're talking about recruitment, but also you upset the whole world this week about recruitment, didn't you?
Well, not the whole world. I had a lot of support.
22%.
About 100,000 people.
Really upset, yeah.
Yeah, so my post on LinkedIn blew up. I put quite a flippant comment on posts. I got off an interview for a very senior position in my business, which the package was, up to £75,000 package. So a very senior position, very well paid job.
Very much so, yeah.
And the person turned up to the job interview sitting on their bed. I just knew the minute they joined the call and they had wired headphones in, I knew that it wasn't for me.
I'm just sat here thinking, after what happened by the fact that you blogged your experience with that and everything, and now you're like a glutton for punishment. You want to do this broadcast on the podcast.
Yes.
Again, you really want to do it.
Yeah. So anyway, I put a post on how I interviewed this person for a 75k a year job, and they turned up, they were sitting on an unmade bed, they had wired headphones in, and the very first question was a very simple question about how they would increase profit in the business. It was a very key part of the role because we have 3 key pillars in Profit Cash Growth. We advise businesses how to increase their profits, improve their cash flow and grow their business. So I kicked off with the very first question, give me some examples of how you've suggested that businesses can increase their profit. And this was supposedly a qualified accountant, with 15, 20 years experience and could not answer that question. But what got me the most is that they were clearly typing it into their computer, clearly using ChatGPT, Google, something to answer that question. Anyway, I blogged that experience on...
That's amazing. So basically, you asked a question, they paused for quite a long while you heard their keyboard typing it into something.
Yeah, they paused, they were looking away. This wasn't just like a bit of nervousness. They were stuck for words or they were finding the question difficult. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I re-prompted the question. I gave them some tips as to the type of thing I was looking for. They had every opportunity, but blatantly this person was just typing away on their laptop. Anyway, I blogged that experience quite flippantly, quite late in the evening, angry, on LinkedIn, and it went wild. Had over 100,000 engagements with it. A lot of people were saying, can't believe this is happening in the UK economy. This is the state of the job market. But then there were some other people that were literally berating me. How dare you?
Basically, how dare you oust this person?
Oust this person.
Imagine the mental health state they're going to be in now when they see this. And I guess the key is it could be anyone. You didn't mention who it was in any way, shape, or form. And
I had already blocked their profile on my LinkedIn account, so that there's no way that they can engage with me moving forward.
True.
But obviously I didn't put that in the post. But what I think is really scary is that there's quite a lot of the world that are on the same page as me, and they're like, do you know what? It's bullshit. It doesn't cut it. If you apply for a 75k a year job and you're supposedly a qualified accountant with 20 years experience, you should know better and you should be ashamed.
Answer a basic question.
But just the way that the interview was conducted was just unprofessional, regardless of that one question. And I think that we are not demanding high enough standards of people in the country anymore. We're letting sloppy, inappropriate behaviour pass. And I think it's a sign of culture.
2.5 times the average salary in this country, isn't it? 2.5 times the average salary. It's not, it's 20% more than the average salary. It's not 50% more. It's 2.5 times the average salary. It's a significantly senior role, isn't it?
Exactly.
Just the conduct expected at that level is the starting point.
And that was my point. And the point was about how it's scary that this person is supposedly a chartered accountant. Obviously I hadn't seen their certificate, but that would have been, if they had got through, that would have been something I would have checked. But, that there could be an accountant out there supposedly qualified that can't answer such a basic question. I wasn't asking something complex about an unusual tax or a share structure or something like that. It was a basic profit-related question, which should be the bread and butter of accountants.
I think the other thing is, like, after the AI episode last week, I think I'm just moving into this world where I think you just can't, I don't think you can interview people over the phone or over a video anymore. I think it's got to be face to face.
Do you know the reason why I always do first stage interviews on Teams or over video is because that interview I wasted 8 minutes on. But if that had been somebody that had come to the office, and come in for a physical interview, I think I would have felt compelled to have given them more of a chance. But I think very often, I will always have 2 or 3 minutes of chit chat with that individual, and quite often I know in that very first couple of minutes whether I'm going to get to a full 45-minute interview with this person or whether I'm going to cut it off. And so I then will just brief them right at the start, and I'll say, if I don't think they're any good, I'll say, this is just a quick 10-minute interview to cover off any initial questions you've got. And I don't waste any more time on it.
How can that person be qualified to a level that they would have spent 5 years studying that not to be able to answer a simple question? They can't have the qualification, can they? Really? I know you're not at that stage where you've done the referencing and checked that, have you? Or can you check them on a register?
Yeah, you can check that everyone's on a register.
Did they have the qualification?
I haven't checked.
Oh, right. There you go. There's one for the recruitment process for today.
Yeah.
First thing, save some time, check first.
Anyway, it turns out that if you put stuff like that on LinkedIn, that's what people get really, really riled up about. But I just think it's a sad state of the economy when there are people out there that will support a 75k a year candidate and that sort of conduct. And I just think the fact that they're coming down on me for it.
Do you know what the problem is?
Being disrespectful to them and not giving them more of an opportunity. I just think, can we get a grip?
You know what the problem is, though, is that the fact that LinkedIn / any platform just rewards that level of divisive behaviour, which is what was happening. Like, the behaviour was becoming incredibly divisive, and it's hardly surprising that our entire society is becoming incredibly divisive, and we're heading to civil unrest at this rate because we encourage it, and algorithms G people up, don't they?
Yeah.
Because you can't, you put a normal post on, it's 5,000 impressions max. 100,000 impressions because people basically were at each other's throats.
And the other one that did a similar number was when I put a post on about how I shared the loaded cost to my employees so they know how much they cost per hour and they can make decisions throughout the day about, whether that's chargeable, whether that's in scope, things like that.
Isn't this about the whole incentive of reward? You reward a certain behaviour and that behaviour just gets more. So if you're going to reward people putting divisive stuff up, people are going to put more divisive stuff up when they're desperately trying to build audiences and make money.
I don't think my comment was divisive. And I think a lot of the audience...
It was just an experience.
But I think a lot of the audience as well agreed that my comment wasn't divisive. But there's a small number of people that obviously thought different. But hey, there we go.
All right, well, let's move on to this week's news story of the week. So this week, the news story I picked out, Claire, said, forget the freedom of freelancing. Give me back my 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be, is it?
No, it isn't. Happy visions of self-employment are surrendering to the harsh reality of non-stop working and job insecurity, all without the perks, and many are looking for full-time work again. And this talks about Lauren's experience here, 39-year-old copywriter who's just fed up of having to take her work. She can't have a holiday. She has to take her work on holiday because having a holiday would mean saying no to business and no to work.
Yeah.
And she said the thanks I get for all this is no holiday entitlement, no pension contributions, none of the perks of being a PAYE employee, and sod it, I'm going back to work.
Yes, this is not necessarily about people building a business. It's more about freelancers, isn't it? These sort of one-man band people that swap time for money.
Yes, the sloppy middle, isn't it, as they say. It's this thing, which I always think is difficult in business. If you don't get through the tough middle and get out the other side, which is usually a 3-year process, I would say, if you're building a business, I always say, like, if you're good and successful, it's really horrible for 3 years, and then you can come out the other side of it with a team.
Yeah.
I saw it. You saw it. We've seen it. Lots of people have had that experience that you can plough through it, but it's going to really hurt for 3 years, maybe 2, maybe 3, and then you're going to have enough of a team around you to be able to enjoy it again.
But I think it's the
this
difference.
freelance thing's difficult because you're on your own all the time.
I think when
hard.
people do these freelance jobs, I don't think they've got any intention a lot of the time of building a team around them. I think that they just want to have their own clients and work for themselves and
it's the
do
worst
that instead
place to
of
be,
going
isn't
for a
it?
job.
I think it's physically the worst place to be on your own because you've got nothing. Like just being self-employed, like being a self-employed one-man band bookkeeper, for example,
it's really tough.
Would be really tough because you can't have a break. It's you and you alone. Nobody's the books. That's a tough place to be. And I see this in estate agency with all the different brands. We've got, got a big branch. We've got lots of team, and I don't have to work in the business, because we've built the business up to do that. But then we've got single man operators, single woman operators, husband and wife operators, and they're always the ones that are on the brink of collapse. They're chasing every penny, every invoice being paid matters, every fall through is a disaster because it's tough because they just don't have anyone and they can't go on holiday for years until they build through it. It just is. I remember when I first started, this couple said to me, don't expect to have a holiday for 3 years. And I think they were right. You got to work through that difficult bit, haven't you?
But if you're a freelancer, then there's no end to that. And that's the difference, isn't it? So forget talking about building a business, Simon. Let's talk about the freelancers and what this news story is actually about. Is that people, I think, are sold this dream of, corporates they're just using you. They're not paying you fairly. Do it for yourself and, be in control of your hours and be in control of your day. But going and finding clients in the first place is unpaid time and, doing your social media and marketing and all of that is all unpaid time that doesn't go into your hourly rate. So, you might get some freedom in that you can choose what you do and when you do it. But actually, you find you work a lot more. Yeah,
Kavitha here she looks so happy now she's back in employment. She said, being self-employed, there were no boundaries. I never took a day off because doing so meant the work piled up just for the next day for me to deal with. Everything was on me and I had little financial stability. And look how happy she looks now she's employed again.
Yeah.
I know.
It is interesting because I think we've been, over the past 10 years, building this anti-corporate, anti-business sort of mentality in the UK, particularly from an employee perspective. But I do see that starting to shift and actually people really valuing steady jobs and really valuing employment and workplace benefits and all of those types of things again. So hopefully there will be more people coming out of the gig economy and these self-employed freelance sort of style people wanting to go back into the workplace again because they've got really good skills.
Yeah. I think it's just, there's often people are sold a bit of a pup. I mean, it's just really hard. And I think if people, at the point where they went to do it, if people were told, how hard it is, a whole load of them probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
What they're told is your boss. Most people leave because they don't like their boss and they feel like they just have to do what their boss says, and they love this idea of being the boss and not having to do what they say. But they don't recognise they now have the customer, and the customer's the boss, and the customer's a much worse boss than a boss. I'll be honest, aren't they? Aren't customers worse than a boss? Really? Like the reality is that you're delivering a service that you're charging for. Like the stakes are much higher than your boss. Your boss has got a load of laws around you about how they can really treat you as an employee, whereas there's no laws or anything about how a customer can speak to you as an organisation. Those boundaries are completely down.
Yeah, and people think, I'll choose the customers that I work with, but when you've got bills to pay, it's a lot more difficult to make that decision, isn't it?
It's a very small amount of businesses that are that in a wonderful position where they can actually be that selective over the customers that they choose. But yeah, great. Well, let's move on to this week's deep dive where we're going to talk through the steps to having a great recruitment process. So Claire, this is built on the back of the fact that, as you said at the beginning, you've just been through a recruitment process for a particularly senior role. So we thought we'd share this week because we have got somebody for the role. And we quite liked the process that we followed this time because we used AI a little bit, didn't we, to help hone it down a little bit. But we thought we'd share what our process was and how we believe we got to a successful result at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I think was really different this time is that I approached recruitment like there was a proper process. There was a proper thought around what we were going to do at the different steps to make each different step effective. And part of that came out of the back of I go to Dan Bradbury's mastermind, CEO mastermind sessions. And in one of those, they had a guy talking about how you could do like personality profile questionnaires and things like that for candidates. And that wasn't new to me. I'd always done those because being in the corporate world, that's quite standard.
Yeah.
But I would always do it at the very end. of an interview process, like a recruitment process.
Yeah.
And what this guy, the penny just dropped, and I felt like I thought, why have I not thought of that before? He was like, just screen your candidates up front. Don't let anybody to first stage interview that doesn't fit your culture and the personality type that you need for the role. So that then triggered that and got me thinking more about the entire process and how I need to be a bit more strategic about how we approach the process and not just sort of get some CVs and roll through an interview stage and then offer somebody the job. But the whole thing needs to be more thoughtful. And out the back of that, we've recruited 3 different positions over the last year, and the recruitment process has been far more successful, and I think we've got a better candidate as a result of it.
I would agree, definitely. And I said this last week that when I joined you for the second interview, the prep you gave me helped me really understand whether that person was filling the gaps that we felt might be there, and it helped us really analyse that. I really like that. So you've got 3 key steps. You've broken this into 3 chunky areas, and you're just going to break down each of them. So let's start with step number 1. What do you do first? What's the thing you've learned the most?
So the first one is all about preparation. And this is a step that, I'll be quite frank, I haven't put a lot of time and effort into before, but it's that whole thing, if you fail to prepare,
you prepare to fail.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that had become quite evident here. So what we did is we really took some time to not just write a job spec. And that's the key difference here, is that historically I would have just written a job spec and put it out there. But what we did is we started off by listing all of the tasks that we think. So when I say we, the team, we listed all the tasks that we thought this person should be responsible for. And we use AI for this. So we then take those tasks and we feed that into AI with our company values, and we ask it to prepare a job spec for us, which gives us that legwork, that grunt work. And in the job spec, because you're not just covering the responsibilities, it's the key skills that this person must have, the personality traits that this person must have, all of that type of stuff. So what we also do up front is every employee in my business has KPIs, and I'm a big believer that we actually call it the success tracker. We don't refer to it as KPIs internally, and we refer to it as a success metric, and we have it on the success log. And so we sit down and decide what those success metrics will be for that role. And the reason that we do that is because that's 3 or 4 key things that role must deliver in our business.
Okay.
And why that is really, really important is because when you're writing a job spec, you probably got somewhere between 10 to 15 responsibilities that person's going to do. And therefore, when you're interviewing that person, you try and find somebody that fills all of them. Yeah. And somewhere you'll have to compromise. You will never get all 10 to 15, I generally find. But what I was losing sight of is what are those 4 key KPIs that person has to deliver.
Yeah, something's resonating here again. Common traits in everything that we cover in the podcast, but harking back maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago, we were talking about, I can't remember if it was KPIs or whatever else, and we had a big bust up about managing for the output. Yes. Not the input. And this is very similar. What you're saying is your inputs are all these 15 granular job description-y bits, but actually there's a core overarching thing that's like, can this person deliver these 3 things. KPIs, and let's get less worried about the how they deliver it versus the can they deliver it. Is that what you mean?
A little bit. But what I'm saying is, when there's 10 things on the job spec, and I know that I'm only going to find a candidate that's maybe got 7 or 8 of them, which 7 or 8 do I pick?
Yeah.
And that's where having those KPIs, really, it's an absolute negotiable that you cannot come through to the interview process if your CV doesn't align to the KPIs. It's not whether your CV aligns to the job spec, it's your alignment to the KPIs that then becomes important. Okay. And then, of course, there are some other roles and responsibilities that we would like you to be able to fulfill. But we would also put them into an order of priority. So number 1 being at the top, number 10 being at the bottom. And, if somebody doesn't have the top 5 but has the bottom 5, well, they're probably not the right fit, because the bottom 5 are like the nice to haves, but the top 5 are the important ones. So it's just about being really, really crystal clear on what is really important for that candidate.
So you're kind of saying build, a 2-layer process. You've got the job description, but then you're effectively doing what I would call an executive summary at the top. That's really, it's got to deliver on these KPIs. You're being ultra clear on the core outcome of the role.
Absolutely.
I like
So,
that.
as an
Different. I like that.
example, if I was taking like a bookkeeper in my business, can they use Xero? That's non-negotiable. We're a Xero practice.
Yeah.
Can they do VAT returns? That's non-negotiable because it's a part of the role. But then saying something like, do you have experience with the construction industry scheme? Well, we've only got 2 clients that use that. So that's not as important to that role. But if I just put it in the list, it gets blurred in with everything else.
Yeah.
And would I take a candidate that doesn't have construction industry experience? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I need to be clear on that beforehand.
Got you.
Because otherwise you risk putting people through to an interview process that are not suitable, and you also potentially would discount people that actually could really deliver on your KPIs really, really bloody well. So we have a job spec and we have clear KPIs for each candidate. And we also will use ChatGPT. We use this for everything. We feed the job spec and the KPIs into ChatGPT and we say, can you make sure that the job spec is appropriate for the KPIs?
Okay.
Because that's the other thing. It's just double checking that the wording that we're using, the responsibilities and the skill set that we've asked for is going to deliver, is going to find us a candidate that can deliver on those KPIs. So just dotting every I and crossing every T up front.
Brilliant. So this is all preparation.
All preparation.
I think already most people will look at what you've just described and go, yeah, I don't do that. Or I do 10%.
Yeah, we normally just write a job spec and go out there.
We're nowhere near that. But that's a massive amount. That's a massive like use case to go, do this next time.
Yeah. And we also will think about the platform that we advertise on. So as standard, we put every job on Indeed and we put every job on our website. But when we're looking at tends to be the lower end of the market, we'll put the job on Facebook. When we're looking at the higher end of the market, we'll put the job on LinkedIn. So also just thinking about the platforms that you go on. And when I say we use Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm talking about paid ads.
Yeah.
So thinking about the platform as well. So we do as much preparation up front to give us the best chance of sourcing the right candidates, because you will get a lot of volume, particularly in finance. There's a lot, these are global qualifications that we tend to find now. So we get a lot of candidates. The jobs that we tend to go for also give people the right income to get a visa in the UK as well.
Yeah.
So we tend to get flooded with candidates, and therefore understanding the cultural fit, the fit for the KPIs and the fit in terms of the skills and responsibilities is really, really important up front. So once we've done all of that upfront information, what we ask ChatGPT to do for us is to create a 10 questions, like a screening process.
Okay, so your second part of the 3-part is all about screening candidates, yeah?
Screening candidates.
So this is about like sieving through to find the gold.
Exactly. Okay, so our job's gone live, we've got CVs coming through, and now we've got to be able to screen the candidates to decide who we want to put through to the interview process. And previously, when I've recruited, a lot of our jobs will get 200 plus applicants for, and therefore that takes an awful lot of time to read through all those CVs, sift through everything, decide who you want to put through. What we do is we use AI. So
shock.
We take the CV.
Do you do anything yourself anymore?
Yeah, well...
Claire lives in 2030.
I'm controlling AI, for God's sake.
I'm controlling AI.
I'm like an AI engineer. So we take the CV and we feed it into AI based on all of the information that it's helped with the job spec. It knows everything about the KPIs. Yes.
Can I just say something? I know that we had the AI episode yesterday and we talked about human changes and how AIs can take job value. But so far, all I've heard from you is not that AI is doing anything you did before, but that AI has just done 90% more than you would have done before.
Yes, more than I had time to do.
Shed loads of value. It's just done new things. It's not done the existing things. It's just done more.
These are all things that I would have liked to have done before, but just simply would have put a lot of time in there.
Yes.
So now what AI is doing is AI is helping me make better decisions because it's doing the grunt work for me. Yeah. So I can then focus on the decision making bit rather than having to do the doing.
Yeah.
So AI makes me make better decisions essentially.
Great.
So we feed the CV into AI. It knows what the job spec is. It knows what our company culture is. It knows what our values are, and it knows what the KPIs are. And then we ask it to give us a 10-point summary, a traffic light system of red, green, amber, where this CV is aligned and where the CV is not aligned.
Yeah.
It gives us an overall score for fit. And if somebody hits that fit score, then they go through to the process. If they don't hit that fit score, they get a decline.
Great.
Simple as that.
So what does that usually, so out of your 200, like what we're talking about, what percentage hit the fit point? Just out of interest.
About 5.
About 5%.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It depends on what level role we're going for.
She's still 10 people.
Yeah. I think the more senior roles, we tend to have less fit because we're more picky. The cultural element at that senior point becomes far more important.
What's interesting though is that like when you've used AI to do an exact match of what the job is, isn't it interesting that 95% of people are applying for jobs that they're not a fit for?
Yeah, but most people just want a job and they care about money. Whereas I want somebody that will help me grow my business, and that's the difference. So you've got to be far more picky. What I would say is that when we're prompting AI, we're asking it to give us a fit for the KPIs, a fit for the roles and responsibilities on the job spec, and a fit for our cultural and our values and how it would fit with the team. So we're being very specific about what we're asking for. We're not just saying, give us a fit, tell us, can they do the job?
Yeah.
So we are asking AI to consider the language and the way that the CV is structured and the language that's used in it, and if there's a covering letter, things like that as well. So that's all going into the mix. So it is essentially doing what we would do when we would look at a CV. It's not just saying, can they do a VAT return? Can they do bookkeeping? It's more in depth than that. So once a candidate has passed that initial, does their CV meet our requirements or not, then the first thing we do is we then send out screening questions, which AI has generated for us. So we set up a Microsoft form, Google form, that type of thing, and we just ask them to answer some questions.
Didn't you get a lady recently refused to fill them out?
Refused to do them, which I just thought says everything about that person. They're never going to come and work at our business. They don't want to.
So funny. I'm not filling them out.
They don't want to fill out a load of questions to say, are you right for this job or not? That just sounded ridiculous. So
anyway.
Yeah, so that's step one of our interview process, if you like, is the screening questions. We focus on their personality and cultural fit. So we ask them, for example, things that they like and dislike about a manager, things that they like and dislike about being in an office, how they like to work, all of those types of things that we're trying to understand a bit deeper. We ask questions about what work-life balance means to them. That's always a very telling question.
Yep.
And yeah, then we might ask some questions about, can you give me a specific example of those types of questions? So we try and keep it to a maximum of 10 questions. And that gives us a better idea of that person and whether they're right.
What are you hoping for the answer to work-life balance to be? Work is everything. I don't need a life.
No, because that person's likely to have some sort of mental health breakdown, aren't they?
No.
Actually, the best answers that we get are people that say that I want to feel something like the right amount of pressure that means that I can be the best of me at work and be the best of me in my home life. That's generally somebody that shows balance.
Yeah. That when they're showing up, they're fully showing up.
Yeah. Whereas some people will say, it's very important to me that I can switch off at 5 p.m. every evening and go home.
Yeah.
And that's not the right for us. Like, don't get me wrong, we do tend to finish at the office on time, but what happens if a deadline's coming up? We need somebody that can and wants to go the extra mile only when it's required. But in return, somebody's got something special on, they get the time back. We're very flexible as well. Got nothing to do on a Friday afternoon, go home, relax, enjoy yourself. So it's the kind of culture that we've got. We work hard, but we play hard.
Okay.
So number one in our interview process is the screening questions. That's step one. And only then, if we like their responses to the screening questions, do they go through the interview process. The reason why we do this is because interviewing people takes a shit ton of time.
Yeah, agreed.
So we're not wasting time looking at CVs, and now we're not wasting time doing first stage interviews for a high volume of candidates.
So let's recap, because we've got the 3-step process, but the steps below them both. So step number 1 is all about preparation. We've covered that. Step number 2 is all about screening people so that you're not wasting time interviewing.
So step 2 is all about so step 2 is all about screening the candidates so that you're not wasting any time taking people through to an interview process that are not culturally right for you.
Yeah. So
when in our preparation process, we will have like 10 questions that we will ask every candidate at the first stage interview. It's that type of thing. And we just we don't want to waste time talking to somebody about that. Let's just stick it on a form.
Yeah, it's a sifting
That's why
process.
we do it, yeah.
Okay, and now we're on to the 3rd step, which is all about the interview.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about how you nail that one.
So historically, before we did the screening questions, we would have wasted a first stage interview asking every candidate the same questions that we can compare.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of time. It meant that every candidate went through an hour's first stage interview, which was quite lengthy. Now, essentially, if somebody gets through to the first stage interview, there's a high chance that they could get the job. We probably only take 5 to 10 candidates through to first stage interview now.
So does this result in a lot less interviews?
Yes.
Is that step 1?
And they're much higher quality.
So much more likely that almost everyone you interviewed could be right for the job. So you're basically just trying to choose between everyone that could do it.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. And then the first stage interview becomes much more bespoke. So again, we go back to ChatGPT, we feed in the KPIs, the job spec, the company culture, we feed in the CV, the covering letter, any email communication we've had with that candidate, because that's very telling as well, and also the responses that on the form to the 10 standard questions that we ask them. And then we ask ChatGPT to summarize the fit for the role and suggest the interview questions that we should be asking that candidate. Based on, normally we're focusing on the weaknesses, but sometimes something's just so weak that it's like, okay, we know that person hasn't got it. So the question might be, okay, we identified this weakness. How will you overcome that?
Yeah.
It's those types of questions. So we're asking ChatGPT to suggest completely bespoke questions that are appropriate for that candidate only. And that really allows us to understand the barriers to somebody succeeding in the role and how they're going to overcome them, or what support they might need from us. If somebody doesn't have experience in something, what support do they need to get that experience, and how long is that going to take us as a company? Is that something we're prepared to do as well? So it helps us understand that. And then it's the chance for them to ask questions as well. And we record the interview. Very, very important. Ideally, you'd record it, set like a voice recorder on your phone, but as a minimum, just set like a Teams meeting up or something and have the transcribe going through it so that you've got a record.
A full recording of the interview, because I'm guessing you're then going to feed that interview transcribe back into ChatGPT to give you analysis on things you might have missed when you're in the depth of the interview.
You've got it. So we then take that transcribe, the recording of the interview, we feed it back into ChatGPT. We ask how it thinks that person would be a fit for the role, what questions it still thinks that we should cover at the second stage interview.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, these interviews are about covering off questions specific to that candidate and not just sitting through a standard interview process that allows us to rank and compare people to make sure that we're being fair and we're not being racist and all of those things that you have to make sure that you cover off in a recruitment process. And we keep going through that process. There's no limit to the amount of times we'd interview somebody. If we get to the end of an interview and we think, I wish we'd asked this or I wish we'd asked that, we keep going.
Now, you're probably the most intelligent person I know.
Oh, thanks.
And what is becoming quite apparent, and this is not an episode about AI, but you basically used AI every step of the process here. And what I think is really interesting is that I don't want to say that it's necessarily done loads of things that you don't have the intelligence or the capability to do, but it probably is taking it to a super intelligent level already. Like, it's taking it to an intelligence that's even above you. And I'm thinking you're the most intelligent person I know in my lifetime. So it is quite frightening how, I don't know what the word is. Good. Is it productive? It's not necessarily productive.
It's a time thing. For me to sit down and summarise.
To have done it to that level, would have taken you, God, it would have taken you time.
It would have taken me probably half a day per candidate to compare their CV and put it into this table and give it a traffic light system, then think of the questions. And it's not even just time, it's brain power as well. It's quite mentally draining to do that.
Super intelligence, because I just think it's doing it at a level as well that even you perhaps would have probably surpassed what you'd have thought of doing.
I would say as well that
it's incredible.
Where this can be really powerful is there are a lot of people, my background's in the corporate world and I've managed big teams. So I've probably recruited 200 plus people in my time, or sat on interviews and supported recruitment processes. Yeah. People that don't necessarily have that experience and are not as comfortable in recruitment. You can essentially have ChatGPT hold your hand through the entire process and really make you quite an intelligent recruiter to make sure that you get the right fit out the end of it.
Absolutely.
But ChatGPT is only as good as the information you feed into it. So having those KPIs clear, having the roles and responsibilities clear, that's really, really important that you do that legwork up front.
I guess the challenge is that I know that you live in the world 2030, as we know. So not everyone will. But
2030 is not that long away. I think I'm in 2050.
Right. I mean, presumably, again, we're broadcasting this, we're training people learn from it, people will adopt the same processes. So businesses will become very strong recruiters. And I just wonder, like, is there enough like 1% people to match when every business is trained to only recruit 1% people? Like, there's going to be a mismatch of skills against what businesses are going to want very quickly.
Yeah, look, I think that not everybody needs to be a 1%er. I think some people are really not very good at thinking and not very good at coming to the table with ideas, but what they are is a really steady, safe pair of hands. And I think sometimes in some roles in your business, that's really, really important. Like, for example, when we've got 2 bookkeepers in the business, we've only got one at the moment, but we're going to get another one soon. And we probably want those 2 to be quite dynamic and quite thoughtful about some of the things they do, advanced with technology, advanced with processes. But the third one, we're probably just going to want to be a really safe, steady pair of hands that just turns up and does a good job every day and doesn't want to change everything and challenge everything, because that's too much. So I often think that you need...
Won't that be the person that probably won't be there in 5 years, because AI will be steadier than them and more consistent than them and less complacent than them? And
no, because you can be steady but still be intelligent. Like, you can, like, I'm not saying that this is somebody that's just sitting there posting transactions. This is somebody that, is happy to take on a reconciliation that's going to take them a day to do, and the other team would, like, they're not interested in that, they don't want to do it. But somebody that's just a bit of a steady Eddie but is still quite intelligent. And so you can be an A player in a slightly different way.
Surely just the very nature of the word reconciliation, that just sounds like a completely AI task. To reconcile something, literally match something against something, and say we used an example, didn't we, last week about legal contracts, about looking at 2 documents and reconciling them. Like, surely those type of tasks will just completely not be.
Potentially, yes. What I would say is when they're doing reconciliations, until for example we could allow AI access to Xero, they're not just taking a list of data and going through it. They're going on, lots of different angles, lots of different areas of information, different transactions. So I think somebody would have to have access to the entire system to be enabled to do it. So,
right.
Anyway,
we're going off on a complete tangent. So let's wrap this up now. So interviews.
So my point is that I would not be afraid to have somebody in for 3 interviews, maximum 4 interviews. I think if you've still got questions or you don't feel sure at that stage, you need to walk away. But often, this old school mentality of 1 interview, 2 interviews, and then you offer the job. If you have any questions, like literally 1 question, even if it's something
if it's still unanswered,
if it's unanswered, ask the question. You don't need to get them in for a formal interview. You can call them. Yeah. You can set up a quick Teams call, send them a WhatsApp, whatever it is. Get your questions answered before you offer the job.
Great. Well, I think that's been mightily helpful for anybody going through recruitment. I think there's just tons that people are going to take away from that as well. I mean, I've taken tons away from it because, I knew some of this stuff you've been going through, but now you've gone through it in granular detail about exactly how to implement it using, step-by-step implement it. I'm definitely going to be using it next time I recruit. I'm going to be, what I've learned most about this is the prep. Yeah, I'm going to prepare more because I can prepare more quickly now as well. If you'd have said that to me, what was required in that, and AI wasn't involved, I probably still would have said, I haven't got time to do that. I would cut the corner. But now I know that I can do it quicker and easier and be more prepared. I definitely will be more prepared next time I recruit. I'm going to run this stuff and be
What we used to do is, without the preparation, we would get really great candidates, and we'd often have 2 people at the end that we were picking from. They would have different skill sets and different personality fits, and then we'd be trying to muddle through and figure out which one we think would be better. But now, because we're so clear on what we want up front, it's much easier to make that decision as to who you think the right fit is.
And that's the point, isn't it? That actually often when businesses are recruiting, they lack clarity themselves on what they want. Yeah. And that's a superpower in itself, being absolutely clear yourself on what you want in order to recruit the right person. So,
do you know where it's also helped a few times as well? Where we've had overqualified candidates apply and they demand a higher salary, and I can see why they demand that salary, but they've got skills that we're paying them for skills that we won't utilise. You're not going to utilise.
So you can also filter out they're too good for the role. Yeah. We don't need that. Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, let's draw a line under that and move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra.
Amazon. So this is
the tour.
Yeah.
Did this recently? No, it's not. It's not that.
One of the biggest bugbears of mine, and I think quite a lot of business owners, is if you use Amazon, if you've got an Amazon Prime account and you use it to make business purchases, trying to sift through and find all your receipts and separate them from your personal ones, your mum's birthday card and any other weird and wonderful stuff that you might buy on Amazon is quite difficult. And a lot of people don't realise that when you have an Amazon Prime account, they give you an Amazon Prime business account, 1 for free.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that. And what that means is that firstly, it's just a really great way of keeping personal and business transactions separate because it's the same login, but it's just like a little switch at the top. But then Amazon Business comes with different features. So, for example, it can email receipts to people. You can give access to your bookkeeper.
Slow down, because that's the key thing. Amazon Business will email you the
Invoices.
for it afterwards. Rather than at the moment, the
You
pain is you've got to go and find
download.
it. They're not available immediately. So it's really annoying. You've got to remember to go back a bit later when the deliveries happened. It never happens. That is the key benefit for business owners, isn't it?
Yes, because the dispatch, often when you place your order with Amazon, you get an order confirmation and a dispatch confirmation. They are not valid VAT receipts. And a lot of the time we get people submitting those to us and we have to say, we need you to go back and request a VAT invoice because we can't claim the VAT based off an order confirmation.
Nice.
So if you've got Amazon Prime, you're paying for that. Get the Amazon business account.
And
keep your
separate
personal
it.
and business stuff separate. You can put multiple team members on
Keep your
there.
accountant happy.
And it just makes that admin process a little bit easier.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's a wrap for another week. Claire, what do you want to promote this week? Your book?
The
The book, the podcast, the discovery call? Like, what do you want to talk about? Should we talk about the book? We haven't talked about the book for a
Let's
while.
talk about the book. Go on then.
You know, if you're new to the podcast and you're not aware, you can get a free copy of Claire's book, Profit by Numbers, 39 steps
Well, if you've got an
to
Amazon,
master your business finances, or you can buy one through Amazon. Yeah.
you can buy one through Amazon, or if you drop me an email with your address, I'll send you one for free.
Yeah, if you drop Claire an email, or you can
go on the website.
just go on the website. It's the easiest thing. Go on the website. You put your address in, and we
I'll send you
literally
one.
post you out a free copy of the
Yeah.
book, and it's a monster of a book. It's really great. You've been getting some insane feedback from it as well, haven't you?
Oh
Like,
yeah, people are raving about it.
absolutely, right? Like they're just putting pictures of it on LinkedIn, and just how much it's like changing their mindset and the way that they're running their business and everything. Like,
And you're keeping my little niece in a job as well because she does all the book packs for me
she
now.
makes them all and boxes them out to all the business owners that want them. So,
And she's fabulous. She times herself so that she can become more efficient, and then she knows how much to charge me as well.
yeah.
So yeah, you're keeping my niece in
So
business.
read the
Please
book.
order a book.
And if you're a growing business, if you're into the 7 and 8 figures and you feel like you might have outgrown your accountant, which is an easy thing to feel these days, then do speak to Claire and the team. You can, I was going to say touch Claire up on LinkedIn. I meant, what's the word? Look Claire up on LinkedIn.
Jesus Christ. Sorry.
Reach out to her and just start dialogue if you want to have a chat about any challenge you've got around your business finances or your business processes around finance, because you can't control your business if you're not controlling your finances, can you, Claire?
No, that is very true.
That's the truth. And please just share this with another business friend. Just pop the link over, drop a text and say, guys, this podcast is great every week. Hopefully you think it's great. And we'll see you again next week.